on Tom Gresham's Gun Talk. Should we be training and arming teachers? More details emerge about the tragic murders at a Florida high school. Also, knowing the gun laws and regulations for traveling state to state. Plus, as always, your questions, comments, and range reports. So call in now at 866-TALK-GUN. Now, here's Tom Gresham.
All right, welcome to Gun Talk. I'm Tom Gresham. Yep, we're going to probably spend close to 3 hours talking about the events in Florida, the shooting at the high school in Parkland, Florida. I'm just angry about it. I'm angry that it happens. I'm angry at the aftermath. I'm angry at the political posturing. I'm angry at the lies that are being told, particularly in the media and by the media. I'm angry at the opportunism of people who want to push a political agenda while we're still waiting to bury the dead. It just makes me mad. And I'm angry at people who will not let us protect our children. You know, we have armed guards to protect our money. But in many cases, it's difficult to arrange for armed adults to be able to protect our children. And we always get but what if this, and what if that, and what if a child got the gun, and what if a teacher in the midst of all this, shot a child? What if? It's like the Flat Earth Society. And then when I tell them, you do understand, don't you, that in 18 states, teachers and administrators are allowed to carry guns to protect children. 18 states. And there's this long silence. I say, and the reason you don't know that is because none of the things you're worrying about happen. If they happen, you would know about them. Everybody would be screaming about them. It just doesn't happen. Well, in Florida, they've been trying to get that for a while, and now joining us right now is Senator Greg Steube from the Florida District, the 23rd District. Senator Steube, you've been trying to get this into Florida for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, I've had this bill filed since 2013. I was former military, and when Sandy Hook happened, I took a real hard assessment of Florida schools, and in my district is a great example. The elementary schools, there's not a single SRO at a single elementary school in my area. They float around SROs and middle schools, and I just saw a real weakness. Yeah. Correct. Yeah, which I don't think is the answer, but I certainly think it would help. So I filed a bill very, very specific that would give former current law enforcement, former current military, in good standing, honorable discharge, that go through a 40-hour specific school safety course that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement would put together, would be required to have 8 hours of active shooter training a year, 4 hours of weapons qualifications training per year, have a concealed weapons permit pursuant to our laws here in Florida. And if they did all of that, then they may be designated by the school superintendent to carry during their time of employment at a school. That way we don't have situations where we have no way to defend our children at our schools.
So you've been doing this since 2013. You introduced the bill. So what kind of pushback are you getting on that?
I've filed that bill every year, and I've passed it. And I was a former House member. I was in the House for 6 years before I came to the Senate. And every time it was the Senate that stopped us. I passed it through the House twice, and then it was the Florida Senate. Well, now I'm in the Florida Senate, and I chair the Judiciary Committee where that bill is referred to, and I can't get a bill like that out of my very own committee because I just don't have the votes for it because of kind of what you talked about in your intro. Nobody wants to listen to the facts. Nobody wants to listen to what's really going to protect our children. And in Florida, every single mass shooting that we have had in Florida has been in a gun-free zone. That's not a coincidence. And it's going to continue to happen until we let our civilians who have gone through a background screening, who have gone through the necessary training, be able to carry to defend themselves and others. And it's going to continue to happen until we allow these people to carry.
Are you finding that it's just you can't get the other senators to just listen to the fact that this already is happening in a number of states with no problems? It's like you want to say, well, why are you objecting to this? You know what it reminds me of, Senator? It reminds me of when concealed carry was making its way across the country. And in state after state, you kept getting every fender bender accident is going to turn into a shootout. It's going to be the Wild West. There'll be blood in the streets. And then as it kept moving, it never happened, it never happened, it never happened, it never happened. And you still got the same arguments every time.
In the state of Florida, with 28 years of concealed carry in the state of Florida, and I've pulled the statistics, I've done all the numbers, concealed license permit holders, and there's 1.7 million of them in Florida, concealed license permit holders are 10 times less likely to commit a crime than a uniformed police officer. So if you're okay with a uniformed officer walking around with a gun on his side, then you should be 10 times more okay with a concealed license permit holder carrying a concealed firearm wherever they want to go. And that's a fact.
Those are the numbers. That's a powerful argument. How do we get from where we are to saying, okay, we are now serious about our children? How do we get them off of the phony political agenda of guns and say, we have to protect our children? Because I like to talk about, it wasn't me who created it, the stopwatch of death. They talk about as time elapses, people die. If you must insist on someone who comes and stops at wearing the right kind of clothes, which is really what it's about, they must be wearing a uniform, okay, then you have to be willing to let a lot of children die so that the person wearing the right kind of clothes can come stop this person.
Almost every mass shooting in the United States has been stopped by someone other than law enforcement because it's over before law enforcement gets there. And in this particular case that just happened in Parkland, the guy just decided he wanted to stop shooting, laid down his stuff, and then tried to blend into the crowd as he ran away. Had he wanted to continue to keep walking the halls and shooting people, we'd have a lot more dead people. If you look at the Pulse massacre that we had, again, in a gun-free zone, it took law enforcement 3.5 hours to get inside the building and to take the criminal down. 3.5 hours while our citizens hid behind bathroom stalls, hid behind chairs, and bled out in the middle of a nightclub without any help. And I just don't think that's the right solution for our state or our country.
Are you getting anywhere after this shooting with the media or anybody talking to you and say, okay, maybe it's time for us to look at this? You've been talking about this for years, Senator. Is this the time where you're going to start getting some traction?
It's the same. You would think so. You would think the more times this happens in a gun-free zone where there's not anybody there to stop it, where citizens just don't even have a chance to defend themselves, you would think. But the conversation goes the other way, and people lack the courage. Even my Republican colleagues, they lack the courage to do what most of us know needs to be done. But instead, the leadership announced that, we're gonna put $100 million extra into mental health funding. We're gonna put $50 million into funding for hardening our schools. That's not going to solve the problem. That's not going to solve the problem of we have colleges, universities, K through 12s that are gun-free zones and that mass shootings continue to happen in gun-free zones, because if you're a crazy person and you want to take out and kill as many people as possible before you're put down, well, you're going to go to a place nobody's carrying.
Sure. I get interviewed about this a lot, and it's interesting. People, and they'll ask the same question in different ways, and you've gotten this question over and over again. How do we stop these shootings? And I've gotten to where I have this one simple answer that seems to stop the conversation and makes people start thinking. They say, how do we stop these shootings? I say, you shoot the sorry SOB. That's how you stop a shooting. You shoot him. It stops when somebody, uniform or otherwise, shows up with a gun. Always does.
And I honestly believe that if we repeal these gun-free zones, people will think twice before hitting a target that they know is a gun-free zone. Because then they'll be like, there could be, like if my bill passed, there could be 5 to 10 trained carriers of concealed firearms in that school, and that person that wants to go kill a whole bunch of people is going to have to think real hard about whether he's going to walk in there, because there could be 10 people on the other side prepared to respond quickly. Yeah.
You have two things going for you. You have the deterrent effect that you're talking about, and then you have the quick reaction effect, which is somebody on the scene can react immediately within 30 to 60 seconds as opposed to waiting 5 to 10 to 15 minutes for law enforcement. And they said, well, we need to call law enforcement. I said, well, so what you're doing, you're saying, we don't want somebody with a gun here. We want to call somebody. And I told them, look, when you call 911, all you're saying is, please send somebody with a gun.
Right.
And it's like they're thinking,
well, what's interesting is,
I never thought of it that way.
this last shooting, there was actually a school resource officer on campus, but the campus was so big, he was on the other side, and it took him 5 minutes to get to where the shooter was. And by the time he got to where the shooter was, the guy had left all his stuff and tried to blend into the crowd. He was at the McDonald's apparently across the street enjoying a meal, trying to blend into people around him. It was over by the time he got there.
I would submit that it kind of goes to your point of he got in there, did that, and then he boogied out because he knew that there was a school resource officer not nearby, but he figured, it's going to take him 4 or 5 minutes to get here. I'll get in, I'll get out, once again thinking, I don't want to be here when the guy with the gun shows up. But if the football coach who ended up getting killed, we required him to put his body in front of bullets instead of letting him shoot back at this guy. He could have saved himself and a lot of other people. And people say, well, he was a hero. Yes, I get that. But it is unconscionable that we required him to die instead of protecting those kids.
I've talked about it for years. It was a big issue in my race. I had a very contentious campaign, and I can't stop talking about the fact that our most precious resource in society is our children, and we are doing nothing to protect them. I mean, you named a school in my district, I can tell you how you could easily walk into that school and start shooting, and it'd just be a matter of time before the police get there, and people are going to die before the police get there. I've been talking about it for so long, I just don't know when I'm going to be able to break through the politics of it all.
What do you need in Florida? Because we have a lot of listeners in Florida. What do you need to happen there?
Well, if you have listeners in Florida, they need to be calling their state senators, because the House isn't the problem. It's the state Senate trying to get a bill like this through the Senate that will protect our kids and at least put somebody there in our schools that can react quickly if something happens. But I tell you, I can text you a photo that somebody texted me today in Arkansas. There's a school in Arkansas that has a photo that says, we have armed personnel ready and willing to engage you if you decide to come onto our campus with a gun. That alone, I mean, just the thought of having people there that are carrying is going to deter people. If you look at the Dark Knight shooter, the guy in Colorado who shot up the movie theater, there were 8 movie theaters within a 4-mile radius of this guy's house. He researched every one of them. There was only one movie theater that didn't allow patrons to carry their guns. Which one do you think he attacked? He attacked the one out of the 8 that he knew people weren't carrying guns.
It makes sense. Senator Greg Steube, thank you so much for your time and for your efforts, and I wish you continued luck. I'm going to ask everybody in Florida to contact your state senators and tell them to support the bill. We need to get armed personnel into these schools to protect our precious resources. Again, Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, 866-TALK-GUN. I know you're talking about it. I know you've been talking to your friends about it, and you probably are watching the news reports and hearing what some of the politicians are saying, and you're mad. Now's your chance to vent. Give me a holler. My number, Tom Talk Gun. Just dial Tom Talk Gun. We'll put you on here. I'm Tom Gresham. This is Gun Talk.
This is Marty Hayes, president of the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. 10 years ago, I created the network to help armed citizens with the legal aftermath of self-defense. There is strength in numbers, and we now have over 15,000 members in the network and over $1 million in our legal defense fund for defensive members after an act of self-defense. To join, visit our website at armedcitizensnetwork.org. That's armedcitizensnetwork.org.
You got your carry permit, and that's good. But you know you could use more training. Get the DVDs, which have what you need. Springfield Armory presents Concealed Carry 1 and Concealed Carry 2 with Bata Group. Learn specific concealed carry skills from Top Gun fighting trainers. Get trained. Be prepared. This really is life and death. ShopGunTalk.com. That's ShopGunTalk.com.
Since 1937, Ducks Unlimited has led the charge on wetlands and waterfowl conservation. Wetlands reduce the effects of flooding and recharge our drinking water, but perhaps most importantly, they allow us to experience what makes the outdoors so great. Band together to rescue our wetlands.
Brownells has gone retro. Check out Brownells' new line of retro AR-15 and AR-style 308 rifles at brownells.com/retro. Whether you're looking for Eugene Stoner's original 308 design, the famous M16A1, Air Force 601, or the XM177 carbine, Brownells has the classic, new production, old-school rifle of your dreams. Own the firearm you used in basic training, carried in service, or that Grandpa always talks about. See more at brownells.com/retro.
All right, back with you. Tom Gresham, 866-TALK-GUN, or just dial Tom, Talk Gun. How tired are you? How mad are you about the media and the left, but I repeat myself, jumping on this, pushing gun control as though restricting law-abiding people is going to fix the problem with crazy people who want to kill people? Okay, I'm going to go there. The FBI screwed up. They had tips on this, credible tips. They dropped the ball. But if you want to talk about who really screwed up, the reports are now that the sheriff's department had been called to the home of this shooter 39 times. The sheriff's department had been to this home 39 times. They had the information. The FBI had the information. Everybody had the information. Nobody wanted to do anything about it. They're too busy with other stuff. And so the sheriff of this department then comes out and says, we need more gun control. Wait a minute. Whoa. You had 39 opportunities to do something about this. And your answer is we need more gun control? Could you possibly be covering up for the fact that you guys blew it? Just possibly? The other one that popped up this week is, well, there have been 18 school shootings in 2018. Jimmy Kimmel said it. In fact, pretty much all the leftists parroted this number. And kudos to the Washington Post for doing a story that says, no, there have not been 18 school shootings in 2018. That number is flat wrong, is the title of this article. It says the figure originated with Everytown for Gun Safety. Of course, it's the Michael Bloomberg gun control group. And, of course, what they want is to make it sound as though it's happening every day, happening several times a week. Not true. According to the FBI, there's no increase in school shootings. But what would they know? So how did they come up with this 18 school shootings just this year? Well, you start looking at some of the cases and you're going, oh, that's how they're doing that. So they have, if a guy is in a car on the parking lot of a school at 2 a.m., school's out, and he gets shot, that's a school shooting to them. If somebody's in a sorority or a fraternity house playing with a gun, and it goes off and somebody gets shot in the leg, or even if no one gets shot, if the gun just goes off, that's a school shooting. Oh, another one. We'll chalk it up. And by doing that, they make it sound like this is Armageddon. There's an epidemic of this happening. And, of course, this is not to make light of how horrible it is, and it is horrible. But it also goes to show the depth of depravity that they will sink to lie about this, to push their gun ban agenda. Not gun control. Don't make any mistakes about that. Gun ban. And they're open about it. We've got to ban the AR-15. Now, wait a minute. Let's go back. The AR-15 is 50 years old. Just call it 50. Been around a long time. Semi-automatic rifles have been around for 100 years. 100 years. We didn't have shootings then. I was talking to a guy today I was out with. He said, I used to go to school and have my gun in the rifle rack of my pickup truck and leave it there, as did many, many young men. Guns in pickup trucks with ammo. No school shootings. So if the availability, let's drop back to what they call the scientific method. What variable changed? If the availability of guns did not change, and it hasn't, and the style of gun has not changed, and it hasn't. We've always, for the last 50 years, we've had AR-15s. And we've had semi-auto firearms for more than 100 years. What did change? Because only when you start examining what variable changed can you start to look at what we possibly need to do about it. I do not yet hear enough talk about psychotropic drugs, about these shooters who are on them or who recently got off of them, or the drug companies who quietly have changed the warnings on them to say one of the side effects could be homicidal ideation, that is, hallucinations or dreams or having thoughts of killing people. That's one of the known side effects. And they say, well, it only happens, maybe like once in 1,000 times, as though that's a low number. But if you have 50 million people taking this, you got a lot of people who are having homicidal ideation. There's a variable for you. How about desensitization, I can't say that, desensitizing people to shooting people? How would you do that? Oh, let's just have youngsters play 10,000 hours of shoot-'em-up video games, very, very realistic shooting games, World War II games, Vietnam games, shoot everybody games, on and on and on. It simply desensitizes people to what real violence is. It makes it like a game. So the availability of guns didn't change. In fact, we used to have guns in schools. We used to have guns in school parking lots without school shootings. Something else changed, and for some reason we seem to be unwilling to look into that. It's one of the things we'll be talking about when we come back. We'll also talk about training you can get, the kind of training we need to have for teachers, and what real training is in the whole fight, hide, run concept. If you'd like to join us, 866-TALK-GUN, 866-TALK-GUN. This is Gun Talk.
Sign up for our Gun Talk newsletter and join the Truth Squad at www.guntalk.com. Now, back to Gun Talk with Washington Times opinion page regular contributor Tom Gresham.
All right, obviously talking about the school shooting in Parkland, Florida. Talking about school shootings, talking about being able to protect yourself, being able to protect our children, having teachers, administrators, staff get training, have firearms. But, I'm reminded of the old phrase of if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And everybody I know who's serious, like really good at firearms, self-defense training, people who go there, do things, that kind of deal. They all tell you, yeah, but you got to know Kembativz, you got to know a lot of other things. It's not just about firearms, although it's, that's included, that's part of it. Joining me right now to talk about that and what maybe some things you need to know, Kelly McCann joins us from Kembativz Brand Security Specialists. Hey, Kelly, welcome to Gun Talk.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I am great. I know you guys teach a lot of things, obviously teach firearms, but there are a lot of other things that people can know and should know when it comes to an active shooter, active attack situation. You teach those things, right?
We do, to major corporations and to other institutions, sure.
Okay. Give me an idea of, if somebody said, well, I'm stuck in a place, there's a shooter here, just maybe a couple or three tips that people ought to know.
Well, the first thing, Tom, is people have to get through this notion of they're going to be, intervention or security from outside. Everybody's responsible for their own personal safety and security. If you look at policies, generally speaking, the Run, Hide, Fight program that the Department of Homeland Security teaches, it's always about securing yourself in a space or, not breaking out and getting out of the area. But the problem with that is that policy supports the idea that law enforcement will have a more difficult job when they arrive on the scene, having to do, if you will, target selection to find those shooters if they were in a crowd of 300 people. But the problem is that historically, the police aren't there to intervene as it's going on. Like this recent incident, all the shooting was over in 6 minutes.
Right.
Kathy Lanier up in D.C., the former D.C. police chief, shocked the country when she said on 60 Minutes, look, you, John Q. citizen, are going to have to intervene yourself sometimes because it's just impractical, even with the post-Columbine procedures of not setting up, an isolation, containment, and control operation, but actually moving, arriving at the scene, doing a quick triage, getting your armor on, and then going into the crisis point. You're still talking, in the best cases, what, Tom, 10, 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah,
well,
and during that time, people are dying.
That's exactly right. So if you remember in the really tragic Virginia Tech shooting, the aftermath showed clearly that a lot of students were killed. They were sitting at their desks. They weren't breaking out of plate glass windows. They weren't jumping out of the building. They weren't leaving. They were waiting. And that's just wrongheadedness. And I think that, there aren't many other solutions to this. Yes, the police would have a more difficult job, but they are also armored. They also have arms with them, and they're trained to do that. So at the end of the day, you can't set a policy based on what makes it easier to do for people who won't likely even be there. That just doesn't make sense.
I am so glad to hear you say that, because time and time again I hear not just politicians, but what I call bureaucrats with badges, police chiefs and supervisors, who say, well, that will make it difficult for our officers because when they go in, they won't know who the bad guy is. And I say, too bad. I don't care. We're going to try to contain the thing until you get there. And then you guys, you got to train your people so they have the skill set to do the right thing when they get in there.
That's exactly right. I mean, there's literally, in a really pragmatic way, there's no other way to look at it. There just isn't. And, I think that it's, the training solutions, the companies that we train are forward-leaning. They do want the blunt, honest opinions and techniques. But if you started to say, okay, well, if you want to train students, then, maybe we need to teach them how to break safety glass. Maybe we need to teach them how to make doors inoperable. The first thing administrators would say would be, well, wait a minute, there's going to be abuses of that. Kids will lock themselves in rooms and not when there's a shooter, but when there's other situation. And yet they're absolutely correct. So let's penalize everybody for the bad behavior of a very tiny, small subsection. It just is not making any sense. The same thing is true about combatives. You mentioned that. We obviously have a worldwide reputation for teaching that and do that all over the world. If you ask the average person, okay, what does the fight mean in run, hide, fight? They give you these answers that aren't meaningful, like, well, I would just tackle him, or I would just hit him, or I'd hit him with a fire extinguisher. Where would you hit him? No one's saying, no, I'd get control of the muzzle while someone else hit him. And then if you start teaching that, the audiences that you teach this to, and this is a human resources problem when we go to some of these corporations, they're like, well, you're teaching people how to incapacitate people. Of course we are. That's what's necessary at that moment.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
that's because we don't have the wherewithal to shoot them, which is what we would have done. So we're going to have to incapacitate them for a while to keep them from killing people.
Exactly right. And so what I'm saying here, Tom, and I'm preaching the choir to you, all your listeners, I'm sure, and you yourself, people, it's like Jack Nicholson said in the movie, you're not ready for the truth. You are not prepared to understand in the unlikely, and they're more frequent now, but still pretty infrequent situation that you might find yourself into, you are going to have to do these things. And, for instance, the use of a tourniquet, how to pack a wound. What about the aftermath? Years ago, if we had talked about, you and I, about, the average citizen should carry a tourniquet and know how to use it, people would roll their eyes and call us extremists and alarmists.
Right.
But the whole golden hour rule, the whole stop the bleed movement and all that stuff really does make sense in the aftermath of one of these situations. But yet when you break that out and you start telling people this is what you need to know, it scares them. It's almost like you're jinxing them by talking about it.
What you've done is you have penetrated the bubble that they have created for themselves. If I don't think about this, then I won't feel bad about it. I won't be afraid of it, even though I know really that it's out there, but I just really would prefer not to think about it.
100%. Yep, that is exactly it. And unfortunately, this is not going to go away. It is just simply not going to go away.
So on an individual basis, basically, if an institution is telling you can't do it, you still need to take care of yourself in some form or fashion. If you can't carry a gun, then carry what you can. Nobody tells you can't carry a tourniquet. So you need to know how to use it, which is important, and then you need to carry it. Kelly, I'm going to run out of time here. Tell people where they can find out more about your operation, okay?
Sure. They can go to our website, www.Kembativz.com. That's spelled phonetically, KEMBATIVZ, or our combat sports website, www.renegadecombatsports.com.
Very good. Kelly McCann, thank you so much. Tons of information we got into a short period of time. Sure appreciate that. All right, if you're on hold, don't go anywhere. We're going to get to you. If you'd like to join us, now's the time to give us a call, because we're going to be taking your calls and letting you vent. I know you want to, because I sure got it off of my chest a little bit. I still have some more left. 866-TALK-GUN.
For more than 70 years, Timney Triggers has been enhancing the shooter's experience. Whether it's a local competition, a day at the range, or even the hunt of a lifetime. Setting the standard in aftermarket triggers, Timney is now producing more than 170 models of triggers for bolt-action rifles, shotguns, AR rifles, and semi-automatic rifles. Proudly made in the USA since 1946. Find your new trigger at TimneyTriggers.com.
If you carry a gun, you need training. Your concealed carry class was definitely not training. But time, money, and obligations keep you from spending days at a shooting school. The trusted folks at Gun Talk can help. Concealed Carry 1, our DVD featuring the VADA Group, covers what gun, what holster, how to carry, where to wear your gun, and much more. Visit shopguntalk.com. That's shopguntalk.com. Look, this really is life and death. Learn how to stay aware, how to get away, and how to fight if you must. At shopguntalk.com, you can get the 2 DVD set, including Fighting with the 1911 with Tiger McKee. No matter what gun you carry, this vital training info can save your life. Learn the draw, the stance, reloading, vital gear from Gun Talk. That's shopguntalk.com. shopguntalk.com.
Are you looking for a place to shoot? The National Shooting Sports Foundation has a great website called wheretoshoot.org. It's the largest database of shooting ranges on the internet. It's also a great resource for shooters where you can find video tips, printable targets, and a lot more. Find it online at wheretoshoot.org. And while you're there, download their free iPhone app. That's wheretoshoot.org.
866-TALK-GUN. That gets you in here. We are open lines for you right now. People are calling in. Line 1, Rob's with us out of Charleston, West Virginia. Rob, what's on your mind here?
Well, my name is Ed. I'm from Arlington.
Hi there, Ed.
Hello, Tom. I talked to you 6 years ago, and I got to warn you, you're not going to like what I have to say here, but I talked to you 6 years ago. At that time, you said Americans should, in your opinion, be able to own fully automatic machine guns, and one of your callers called in and talked about bump stocks. I was wondering, how did that work out there in Las Vegas with the 58 people machine gunned to death, the 500 more wounded? And before you cut me off, Tom, I am a teacher, so let's talk about school security.
Okay, I will talk with you, but you're going to have to let me talk, okay? Fair enough? Okay. So what's your position? You're saying that, I'm trying to figure out, I know you're doing the passive-aggressive thing, but why don't you just ask a straight-out question or make a statement? Do you want to ban bump stocks? Is that where you want to go?
Absolutely, Tom, and machine guns and AR-15s, as do most Americans.
Really? They do?
Absolutely.
Now, what I find interesting is that you lump semi-automatic rifles in with fully automatic. You do know the difference, right?
Yes, I do, sir. I was an Army guard. I know what I'm talking about.
Well, not really, but that's okay. So you do understand that President Teddy Roosevelt hunted with a semi-automatic firearm 100 years ago.
Tom, why were AR-15s made if they're no different than other guns?
Why were every firearm made as a military development? Every firearm, from your 1911 to your revolver to your lever action to your bolt action, they're all military developed firearms. That doesn't mean that's what they're used for. Today, tens of thousands of people will use AR-15s and not shoot anybody. Tomorrow, tens of thousands of people will use AR-15s and not shoot anybody, again and again and again. It's not a case of what they were originally designed for, because every military firearm is designed for the same thing. It's what they are being used for, and there's certainly, more people are killed in the United States with fists and feet than with all rifles combined. So your argument just falls apart.
Not true, but we'll disagree on that. Tom, how many people were killed in Japan last year with guns?
Oh, you mean a place where they have no guns?
Actually, guns are allowed there, Tom. I've been there 22 times. You're allowed to own a rifle in Japan. They just are very thorough in their background checks. They don't allow handguns or assault rifles. The answer is 6. They had 6
And of course, the other aspect of Japan, if you're going to bring that up, of course, we know that it's a homogenous society. We also know that there are a lot of countries that have a lot of guns that have low crime with guns. We have countries with a lot of guns and have higher crime. But let's talk about, the thing that nobody ever wants to talk about, which is Japan and suicides, because, of course, 2/3 of our gun deaths in the U.S. are suicides, and Japan has double the rate of suicide that the U.S. does, and they have no guns. So that starts to fall apart as well. What I'm hearing here is that you don't like guns. But more importantly, I think it's that you don't like gun owners, because honestly, it is completely disingenuous, which is to say dishonest, to put machine guns and AR-15s into the same group. Also, I would ask you this: how many people have been murdered with machine guns? Legally owned machine guns. How many?
Not very many, because they are illegal.
No, they're not. Hundreds of thousands of people own machine guns. Are you unaware of that?
They have to pay $50,000, don't they, Tom?
No, they don't, my friend. Where did you hear that? That's crazy.
That number.
Where did you hear that?
Wait, Tom, I'll challenge you on something. I've actually talked to you a couple of times.
No. Wait. Every time I ask you a hard question, you try to throw another question out. You won't answer my questions. No, machine guns are entirely, completely legal to own in the United States. Yes, they are, my friend.
Firearms Act under Miller, they are not legal, but we'll disagree on that.
Wait. Okay, but put Ed on hold because he's too stupid to listen. Machine guns are legal. I have dozens upon dozens of friends who own machine guns. There are more than 100,000 people in the United States who own legal machine guns. There is, to my knowledge, only one murder has been committed with a legally owned machine gun, and that was by a police officer. But for anybody who sits there and says machine guns are illegal, and then faced with the evidence that they're not, because you can just go buy them, and yeah, they're expensive. You're going to pay, you might start at about $8. It may cost you $10,000 to get a machine gun. But I know a lot of people who have them, and they don't kill anybody with them. So the answer to the question that Ed doesn't want to answer is, the question is, how many people have been killed with legal machine guns? As far as I am aware, one, and that was by a police officer. It's a really simple thing, but Ed doesn't want to go there. And you notice it's the typical deal, right? It's the passive-aggressive deal, where I ask a question, and he knows where the answer is going to take him. It's going to take him to a place where he has to admit that he's wrong. And so he won't answer it. He comes back with another question. So, if you want to engage. And I said, I will talk and you will talk. But if I ask a question and I ask it, in good faith, you got to be willing to address it. It really is as simple as that. It's kind of unfortunately, it's the regular pattern that we get with the leftist gun banners. And Ed certainly is a gun banner. He wants to ban the gun that I used to shoot my first deer with when I was 11 years old, more than 50 years ago, because it was a semi-automatic rifle. 866 Talk Gun. You ever run into somebody like Ed? How'd you handle it? All right, back with you. Tom Gresham, 866 Talk Gun, or just dial Tom Talk Gun. Now look, if you're a gun banner, you're welcome here, okay? But you got to come armed with at least a modicum of information. You can't say dumb things like, well, machine guns are illegal. I'm going to call you on it. I'm going to bust you on it every time. They're not illegal. There's 100,000, actually, I think it's a couple 100,000 people who have machine guns in the United States legally. Why don't you hear about it? Well, because they don't commit crimes. Simple, okay? And to conflate, which is the cool word, or pretend that it's the same thing, an AR-15, which is a semi-auto, and a machine gun, which is a full auto, which of course was the original concept behind the creation of the phony word assault weapon. The guy who created the assault weapon term, he said, look, he says, the public doesn't know the difference between semi-auto and full auto, and we can confuse them, and we can make them think that we're saying we need to ban machine guns when what we're really talking about is banning the guns that people use for competition and for recreation and for hunting, but because they look alike, we can confuse people and we can use that to our advantage. They were actually pretty open about it. Of course, now they pretend that's not what they're doing because we've called them on it again. And then when you have a caller like our last caller who says, well, machine guns are illegal. Really? No. No. In fact, if you want to own a machine gun legally, you got to go through a process. Yeah, it's called $200 tax and a weight and a background check. There's a lot to it. All right, let's see. Let's go to Rob is on line 3 out of Charleston, West Virginia. Hey, Rob, welcome to Gun Talk.
Hey, Tom, how are you? Can buy. I have a friend of mine that has a machine gun. He paid about $2,500. It was a used one. But anyway, getting back to these, this young man that was in Florida that was sold that assault rifle. They should never have sold that rifle. That guy had all kinds of mental issues. The police would call to his house dozens of times. How in the world they ever sold him a rifle, it's beyond me. But besides that, these people that go in these schools and do these things, or wherever they do them at, especially like Virginia Tech, they know they're going to die or they're going to commit suicide. They don't care. They don't care if the police are there. Hey, it took Virginia Tech. They had 70 Virginia Tech police officers, and plus a mile away was a police department, and it took 20 minutes for them to get there, and then they didn't enter the building until after all the shooting was, and they committed suicide. So it's not a matter if you have legal guns or illegal guns. These people don't care. It's like going all the way back to when this guy Hinckley attempted to assassinate President Reagan. He knew the Secret Service had weapons. He didn't care. He just wanted to make a point.
Well, Rob, let me ask you a question then. So what should we do if, and to your point, if somebody says, I'm going to go into a school or a church or someplace, I'm going to shoot it up, I don't expect to come out. What should we do, one, to prepare for it, and how should our reaction be on that?
Make sure, first of all, he doesn't have any guns. That's number one.
How are you going to do that? Wait, stop. How are you going to do that?
Well, go to his house, parents, and find out who he is.
What if you don't know who he is? Because most of these people, we don't know who they are. They just show up and start shooting. Now what do we do?
Oh, well, once they show up and start shooting, then it's a different story. But, people make all kinds of crazy remarks. You can't take every one. Then you start violating people's civil rights. It's really a copy. Another thing, we're such an open society with colleges, public schools, sporting events. You're never going to stop this. I don't care if you ban guns like Japan. It'll never going to stop it.
Rob, I understand what you're saying, but honestly, when you say you're never going to stop it, people get confused about stopping and preventing. Preventing it may be difficult. Stopping it is not that difficult. You stop it by shooting him. You stop it by shooting him. You stop it by shooting him. It's really very effective. But you got to have somebody on site who has a gun and has the training and knows what to do with it. Shoot him. It stops it all right there.